Hi, grade 5s. Today what we're going to do is we're going to keep working with equivalent fractions. We started this last day. We mainly worked with pictures, and today we're going to work mainly with just numbers, and we're going to see if we can kind of make sense of how equivalent fractions work with numbers. So first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to write 2/3 as an equivalent fraction. So let's quick draw a picture. This is what we did last day, so I'm going to just make a rectangle, probably for me one of the easier ways to draw 2/3. Just a reminder, top number is always what we call the numerator. That's kind of like how much we have or how much is shaded in. The bottom number is what we call the denominator, and that's what a whole is divided up in. So in this case, my rectangle, I'm going to divide it up into 3 because the denominator was 3. So the bottom number always tells us what to split a whole up into. So in this case, I'm going to get out my red and I'm going to shade in 2 of these. So that is 2/3. Now we talked about equivalent fractions last day. So the word equivalent just means it's the same amount. So for example, if I asked for 2/3 of a cake, that I want to find another fraction, so different numbers, but it would give me the same amount of cake. So last day we talked about how we could actually like draw a line down the middle here. And now you can see I'm still getting the same amount of cake, but now my cake is actually cut into 6 pieces. So the denominator now becomes 6. And for me to get the same amount of cake, I now have to have 4 pieces of this 6-piece cake. Okay, so I'm hoping that kind of makes sense to you. So now what we want to do is we want to talk about equivalent fractions. And we want to ask ourselves, well, how can we do this without drawing a picture? Okay, so you could see like this cake too. I could cut them, and remember the pieces have to be equal sized pieces. I know my picture's not perfect, but let's say for example we cut them like that. So now you can see how many pieces make up my cake. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can see now I have 8 pieces out of 12. That's again equivalent. I'm getting the same amount of cake. So 2/3 is also the same as 8/12. Well, how can I figure these things out without always drawing a picture and cutting pieces up into more pieces? Well, here's the key. This is what I want you to do. An equivalent fraction is created whenever we do the same operation to the top and bottom. So in this case, we're talking about multiplication or division, and we do the same to the top and bottom. So in this case, 2 times what gives me 4, and you can see 2 times 2 gives me 4. Now if I do the same to the bottom, so 3 times 2, I get 6, and you can see this makes an equivalent fraction. In this bottom example here, 2 times what gives me 8? Well, that would be 4. So therefore, 3 times 4 would give me 12. So 8/12 must be equivalent to 2/3 because I did the same to the top and bottom of this fraction. So let's just flip the page here. We'll just show you a couple more here. So let's say, for example, I had 3/5. And I wanted to create an equivalent fraction. And let's say it doesn't matter to me what equivalent fraction I make. Well, I'm going to create an equivalent fraction by multiplying or dividing the top and bottom number by the same amount. So in this case, let's say that we're going to multiply the top by 2. We'll just keep it nice and simple, which means I have to multiply the bottom by 2 to keep this equivalent. So 3/5 is the same as 3 times 2, which is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. It is the same as 6/10. Now, let's say, for example, I had 10/15. One thing we'd like to do is we would like to write equivalent fractions in the simplest form. And you can see here, what we want to do is ask ourselves, what can we divide the top and bottom number by to make this even a smaller equivalent fraction? So we'll want to reduce this. And in this case, you can see 10, you can divide it by 5 because it ends with a 0. Or you can do 15 divided by 5. Now watch this, 10 divided by 5 gives me 2. 15 divided by 5 gives me 3. So 10/15 reduces to 2/3. So that would be it in its what we would call lowest terms. I hope you start seeing how we can create equivalent fractions here. Have a great one, Math. Bye.